My husband left for Scottsdale on my due date and told me, stay quiet and call an Uber. 2 days later, he came home to legal separation papers. The phone rang at 10:58 on a Sunday night, and I let it ring twice before I answered. I knew exactly where he was standing. I didn't need to be there to see it. The kitchen island I had wiped down 1,000 times, the pendant light he never learned to dim, and sitting in the middle of all that quartz, one sealed envelope with his name on it, tucked under a business card that read, Rebecca Lawson, attorney at law. My son was asleep on my chest, not quite 2 days old, making the small grunting noises newborns make when they dream about whatever newborns dream about. I had a burp cloth on my shoulder and a heating pad against my back, and 31 stitches of exhaustion holding me together. And across town, in a house that used to be mine, my husband was learning how his weekend really went. I picked up on the third ring. What the hell is going on? Ethan yelled, not asked, yelled into a kitchen that had already been emptied of everything that would have yelled back. I looked down at Noah. His fist was curled against my collarbone like a comma, like a pause. I'm doing what you told me, I said. There was a silence on the line so complete I could hear his refrigerator hum, and then he said my name, just my name, Maddie, and his voice cracked straight down the middle. To understand how we got to that phone call, you have to go back 7 weeks, because that's when he told me the first time that I was on my own, and I did the one thing he never planned for. I believed him. 7 weeks before the phone call, I was 33 weeks pregnant and sitting on the edge of our bed timing contractions on an app while my husband's dinner reservation went on without me. It was his mother's birthday. Lorraine had rented the back room at a steakhouse in Cherry Creek, the kind of place where the bread arrives with its own biography. I'd been having tightening pains since 4 o'clock, the kind the pregnancy books tell you to monitor, and by 7 they were coming every 12 minutes, and I was scared in that specific, lonely way you get when your body starts doing things without consulting you. I called Ethan at 7:22. I know because I stared at that call log for weeks afterward. Hey, what's up? Restaurant noise behind him. Laughter. His mother's laugh, which I could pick out of a stadium. I'm having contractions. 12 minutes apart. The nurse line said to come in and get monitored. A pause. Not a worried pause. A calculating one. Babe, it's probably Braxton Hicks. You're not due for 7 weeks. They said to come in, Ethan. We just ordered. Mom's doing her toast thing. A breath, and then the sentence that started everything, though neither of us knew it yet. If you're really worried, just call an Uber. It's probably nothing. I sat there with my phone against my ear and my other hand on my stomach, and I waited. I genuinely waited for him to laugh and say he was kidding, that he was already asking for the check. Okay, I said. Okay, see, you're fine. Text me what they say. The Uber driver was a man named Gustavo, who kept glancing at me in the mirror and drove like the car was full of eggs. He walked me to the emergency entrance, even though he didn't have to. A stranger with a Honda Accord and a phone mount did more for me that night than my husband did. It was Braxton Hicks, false labor. The triage nurse monitored me for 2 hours, gave me a printout, told me to hydrate. I sat in that curtained bay listening to a woman down the hall breathe through the real thing, her husband counting for her, low and steady, 4, 5, 6, and something in my chest went very still. Ethan texted at 10:41, told you it was nothing. Mom says hi. He got home at midnight smelling like ribeye and someone else's celebration, kissed my forehead and said, see, you've got to stop panicking. Stress is bad for the baby. I lay awake next to him for a long time. I wasn't crying. That's the part people don't expect when I tell this story. I was doing something much more dangerous than crying. I was taking him at his word. Here's what you need to know about who I was before all this, because it matters. My name is Madison Walker, Maddie. I'm 31. For the last 6 years, I've worked as a contracts administrator for a civil engineering firm in Denver, which is a job nobody dreams about in kindergarten, but which teaches you one lesson so thoroughly it rewires your brain. What people say is not the agreement. What's in writing is the agreement. I spend 40 hours a week reading fine print for a living. I know the difference between a promise and a term. I know that we'll take care of it is not a clause. I just had never applied any of that to my own house. Ethan sold surgical devices, the charming kind of job for the charming kind of man. Good teeth, good handshake, could talk a hospital purchasing board into anything. When we met, I mistook his confidence for steadiness. It took me years to notice the confidence had a supply line, and the supply line was his mother. Lorraine Walker was 61 years old and had never once been told no in a way that stuck. She picked our wedding venue. Found was her word. I found you the perfect place. Deposit already down. She picked our honeymoon resort in Cabo. And I want you to sit with this. She and Ethan's father Gary booked the villa next door, so we could all experience it together. I spent my honeymoon having breakfast with my in-laws for 6 consecutive mornings while Gary read golf news off his phone and Lorraine explained what I should order. I told myself it was closeness. Some families are just close. My family was small and quiet. My mom, my sister Claire, a rotation of casseroles, and I thought maybe this was what a big personality of a family looked like. There were red flags planted in that marriage like survey stakes, and I stepped over every one of them. Ethan never chose me over her because he never framed anything as a choice. Everything was logistics. Everything was the deposits already down. Everything was don't make this a thing. And then I got pregnant and I found out where I actually stood because the baby made everything a choice. The second thing happened at 35 weeks, and it happened because of a shared iPad. We kept an old iPad in the kitchen for recipes. Ethan's email was logged into it, which I never never thought about because I am apparently the last trusting woman in Colorado. I was looking up a slow cooker recipe on a Tuesday night while he was at the gym, and a notification banner slid down from the top of the screen. Your PTO request has been approved. OC 9 to 13. I stood there with a wooden spoon in my hand doing math I didn't want to do. My due date was October 10th. I told myself it was a surprise. I actually did that. For about 90 seconds, I constructed an entire fantasy where my husband had secretly taken the week of my due date off to be with me, and the warmth of it spread through my chest like soup. Then I opened the email. Force of habit, I read documents for a living. The PTO request had been submitted 5 weeks earlier. The note field, which his manager could see, read, "Family trip, Scottsdale." And underneath it, in the same inbox, was the thing that turned my hands cold, an HR newsletter from his company. Reminder, all employees are eligible for 2 weeks of paid parental leave within 12 months of a child's birth or adoption. 2 weeks, paid. Ethan had told me, at dinner, holding my hand, doing his sincere face, that his company didn't really do paternity leave, that medical sales was old school like that he'd try to work something out, but I shouldn't get my hopes up. I had squeezed his hand and told him it was okay. I had comforted him about it. He had 2 weeks of paid leave sitting untouched, and 5 weeks ago he had spent 4 vacation days on Scottsdale instead, timed to my due date, and typed family trip in the note field with his own thumbs. I sat down on the kitchen floor, not dramatically. My legs just declined to continue. I sat on the tile with the recipe still glowing above me and my son rolling slowly under my ribs like a tide, and I felt the exact moment a marriage changes state. Not shattering, nothing that loud, just water going to ice. Same molecules, different structure. That Thursday, I tried the thing you're supposed to try. I brought it up gently, over dinner, no accusations, textbook. I was thinking, I said, maybe you could ask HR again about leave, even a few days. I've heard some companies quietly have policies. He didn't blink. That's what I need you to understand. He didn't pause, didn't glance away, didn't do any of the things bad liars do. I already asked, babe. It's not a thing. Old school industry. He speared a piece of chicken. Can you pass the salt? I passed the salt. I watched my husband lie to me with the fluency of a man reading a menu, and I understood that this was not the first time. It was just the first time I had the exhibit in hand. That night, I started a folder on my personal laptop. I named it House Stuff in case anyone ever glanced at my screen. Inside, I saved a screenshot of the PTO approval and a screenshot of the parental leave policy. The contract's administrator had entered the chat. The dinner announcement came at 37 weeks, and by then I'd love to tell you I saw it coming. But the truth is, the specifics still managed to be worse than anything I'd braced for. Lorraine hosted. She'd made her brisket, which meant an occasion. Gary poured wine for everyone, hovered the bottle over my glass out of what I can only assume was reflex, then moved on. And somewhere between the brisket and the store-bought pie she presents as homemade, Lorraine folded her hands and said, "So, we have news." The news was a long weekend in Scottsdale, a resort she loved, spa credits, a golf package for the boys, the whole family, she said. And then she looked at my stomach the way you look at luggage that exceeds the size requirements. Well, those of us who can travel. The dates, I said. What are the dates? The 9th through the 13th, Ethan said, in the tone you use for the weather. My due date is the 10th. Lorraine laughed, a light, hostessy laugh, the kind designed to make whatever was just said sound hysterical. Oh, honey, due dates are a guess. I was 2 weeks late with Ethan. First babies never come on time. Everyone knows that. The flights are already booked, Gary said to his phone. I looked at my husband. This is the part I replay. I looked at Ethan and I gave him one full, silent second to be the man I married in my head. To say, obviously, I'm not going, Mom. To say, we'll join next time. To say anything with a spine in it. Ethan reached for more brisket and said, "It's 4 days, Mads. You'll have your sister." The ringing in my ears was so loud I missed the next 30 seconds of conversation. When I tuned back in, Lorraine was talking about the resort's swim-up bar. I excused myself to the bathroom, and that's where the last piece fell into place, because Ethan's iPad habits extended to leaving his phone on the counter, and the group chat, Walker Family Fun, lit up while I was washing my hands. I did not open his phone. I didn't have to. The preview sat right there on the lock screen. A message from Lorraine sent that afternoon, hours before dinner. Don't let her guilt you out of this. She'll manage. Women have babies every day. This weekend is about family. Underneath it, the little icon showing my husband had loved the message. A tiny thumbs up heart on my erasure. This weekend is about family, meaning I was not family. I was the vessel family came in. I dried my hands. I checked my face in Lorraine's decorative mirror, and then I went back out to that table, and I smiled and I ate the store-bought pie, because I had stopped being a wife in that house and started being a contracts administrator, and a contracts administrator does not tip off the other party before the paperwork is ready. On the drive home, Ethan said, "See, that wasn't so bad. Mom's really excited." I said, and watched the streetlights, and made a phone call in my head. I met Rebecca Lawson for the first time on a Wednesday lunch break, 36 weeks pregnant, in an office with better chairs than any law office deserves. I'd gotten her name from a woman at my firm, one of our outside counsel referrals, who'd said quietly, "She's who I'd call." Rebecca Lawson had been practicing family law in Colorado for 19 years. She had gray at her temples she clearly wasn't fighting, reading glasses on a chain, and the bedside manner of a woman who has heard record everything twice. On her wall were the framed things, the license, the certifications, and on her desk was a legal pad she used the way surgeons use scalpels. I talked for 11 minutes. She wrote the entire time. When I finished, she took off her glasses. First question, she said, "Are you safe? Is there any violence? Any threats? Anything physical?" "No, nothing like that. It's not that." "Good. Then we have time. And time is the most valuable thing you can bring me." She flipped to a new page. Second question, "What do you want? Not what you're angry about. What do you want?" Nobody had asked me that in months. Everyone asked how I was feeling, meaning the baby. Ethan asked nothing. "I want my son to be born into calm," I said slowly. "I want to not be punished financially for being the one who stayed. And I don't want to do anything I'd have to defend later. I read contracts for a living. I want this clean." Rebecca smiled for the first time, and it was the smile of a woman being handed her favorite kind of client. "Then here's what clean looks like," she said. Clean looked like a petition for legal separation, not divorce. "Not yet. You're on his employer health plan," she said, tapping the pad. "So is that baby, the second he's born. Most plans terminate a spouse on divorce. Legal separation, in most cases, preserves coverage. We do not blow up your insurance in your 40th week of pregnancy to make a point. We can convert to dissolution later if that's where this goes. Separation gets you every protection that matters right now with the least fire." Clean looked like documentation. Every account photographed, every statement downloaded. My screenshots from the iPad went into the file, and she labeled them the way I label change orders. "This is exhibit territory," she said, holding up the parental leave screenshot. "A judge doesn't care about vibes. A judge cares that he had 2 weeks of paid leave available and booked Scottsdale over your due date in writing. His own thumbs did half my job." Clean looked like rules I had to follow too. And this is the part I want to be honest about, because the internet version of this story would have me draining accounts and burning his suits in the yard. Rebecca forbade all of it. The day we file, an automatic temporary injunction attaches to this case. It's built into Colorado law, standard in every family case. No unusual withdrawals, no transferring property, no yanking anyone off insurance. It binds you the moment we file. It binds him the moment he's served, so you will not touch a dollar you can't account for. You will redirect your own paycheck to your own account, because your wages are yours to deposit, and you will leave the joint accounts exactly as they sit. We win this by being the reasonable one holding receipts. Do you understand? "I understand," I said, and I did. It's the same reason you never alter a contract in pencil. The clean copy always wins. The plan had one more architect, and she wore scrubs. Dr. Priya Nair had been my OB through the whole pregnancy. 14 years of practice. A manner so calm you could set your pulse by it. At my 37-week appointment, I asked to update my paperwork, and I crossed Ethan's name off the emergency contact line and wrote Claire Benton, sister in handwriting so steady it surprised me. Dr. Nair looked at the form, then at me, for one careful beat. "Is there anything going on at home I should know about? Anything for your safety?" "No violence," I said. "Just a reorganization." She nodded slowly, the way doctors nod when they filed something away. "Then let me tell you about one more option. We can mark your chart private. It's a confidentiality status. You'd have an approved support list. If anyone calls the hospital, anyone at all, the staff confirms nothing. Not whether you've been admitted, not whether you exist." "Anyone?" I said. "No matter who they are? No matter who they are." I thought about Lorraine's voice on a phone, demanding, escalating, asking for supervisors. I thought about she'll manage. "Mark it," I said, and signed without blinking. The townhouse came 3 weeks before my due date on a quiet Tuesday while Ethan was at work. 2 bedrooms, across town, $1,850 a month. Ground floor unit so I wouldn't be hauling a car seat upstairs. The property manager slid the lease across the table and I read every line of it, force of habit, and signed my name, Madison Walker, and it was the first document in a year that felt like it was on my side. Then came the slowest, strangest 3 weeks of my life, moving out of my own house in plain sight, one tote bag at a time. A drawer of maternity clothes became a drawer of decoys. My winter things migrated first. He'd never miss those. Then books. Then the box of my grandmother's dishes from the garage. Claire drove her Subaru over every few days on her lunch break, and we loaded it like polite burglars. My mother stocked the townhouse freezer with lasagna the way other people stock bunkers. And here is the detail that still sits in my chest like a stone. He never noticed. I gave him chances. I want that on the record. One night, I left my closet door open with half the hangers empty, bare wire glinting under the light, and I waited for him to walk past it. He walked past it. Another night, he asked, "Where's the lamp from the den?" And I said, "I'm reorganizing, nesting." And he said, "Cool." And that was the entire investigation. A stranger named Gustavo once noticed I was frightened from the front seat of a Honda. My husband could not detect the disappearance of my entire wardrobe from 6 feet away. You cannot be surprised by the leaving of a man who never looks at you, but you can grieve it. I did both, quietly, folding onesies in a townhouse he didn't know existed. The crib stayed at the house. That was deliberate. Partly cover, partly something colder and truer that I didn't say out loud even to Claire. Let him walk past an empty crib every day. Let the house explain it to him. By October 8th, the townhouse held everything that mattered except the two of us still using my ribs for a drum kit. The hospital bag sat packed by the front door of the old house, right where a husband would trip over it, which brings us to the morning of the 9th. My due date was the next day, and the hospital bag sat by the front door. So unloaded my husband's suitcase. I was 40 weeks pregnant, swollen ankles, bare feet on cold hardwood. I stood in his old college sweatshirt and watched him roll his suitcase right past the bag that held our son's first outfit, a little gray onesie with a fox on it, like the two bags were strangers in an airport. "Are you really leaving today?" I asked. Not because I didn't know the answer, because I wanted to hear him say it in the daylight. Ethan sighed like I was the problem. "Maddie, we already talked about this." We had not talked. He had announced. "There is a difference, and I know it professionally. The due date is tomorrow. The due date is an estimate. Doctors say it all the time." He checked the front pocket of his suitcase for his charger. His priorities that morning, in order: charger, sunglasses, boarding pass. Somewhere below that, me. Outside, a horn honked twice. Lorraine's SUV idled at the curb, sunglasses on, chin high, the posture of a woman collecting a prize. Gary scrolled his phone in the passenger seat. Neither of them came inside. Neither of them had asked, at any point in 40 weeks, how I was feeling. I'd counted, the way you count things at 3 a.m. "I could go into labor today," I said. "Tonight, while you're at a swim-up bar." He checked his watch. Not my face, his watch. "Then call an Uber." The baby kicked hard under my ribs. One sharp knock, like even he'd heard it. "Ethan." And then he turned around, one hand on the door, and gave me the last sentence of our marriage, though he didn't know it yet. "Don't start a fight. Stay quiet and call an Uber. The tickets are non-refundable." Something inside me went very quiet, very still. Water to ice. Same molecules, different structure. "Okay," I said. His shoulders dropped in relief. He thought he'd won. He kissed the air near my cheek, rolled his suitcase down the walk, and climbed into his mother's SUV. Through the windshield, Lorraine looked at the house and smiled. The satisfied smile of a general watching a border move. I smiled back at her. She had no idea what she was smiling at. The SUV pulled away. I locked the door. Then I walked to the kitchen, put my hand on the counter for balance, and called the number saved in my phone under Rebecca Lawson, attorney at law. "He left," I said. "Today? 20 minutes ago. Airport." A short pause, and then the question my husband had never asked, that his mother had never asked, that a woman I'd met 3 times in a law office asked first. "Are you safe?" I closed my eyes. "Yes." "Good," Rebecca said, and I heard her chair roll toward her desk, heard the legal pad flip. "Then we follow the plan. I'm filing the petition this afternoon. Once it's filed, the injunction binds you, so nothing unusual moves. Not that it was going to. He gets bound the moment my process server finds him. Anything changes with your body. You call your sister, and then you call me. In that order." "In that order," I said. I spent the day doing the most ordinary things of my life. I ate my mother's lasagna. I washed the fox onesie in the townhouse's little stacked washer, and packed a second hospital bag, the real one, because the one by his front door was staging now, a prop in a play he didn't know he was in. At 2:15, Rebecca's paralegal emailed, "Filed. Case number 26 DR 1147, Denver District Court." I read the caption, "In Ari, the marriage of Walker and Walker," and waited to feel something enormous. What I felt was my back beginning to ache in slow, rolling waves. The contractions started for real at 9:07 that night. By 11, they were 5 minutes apart, and there was no app confusion this time. No maybe. My body had a schedule, and it had stopped taking meetings. I called Claire. "It's time." "I'm already grabbing my keys." I could hear her keys in the background. My sister had been sleeping with her keys, I found out later, for 2 weeks. She drove her Subaru through the empty streets with both hands at 10 and 2, doing the counting thing, 4, 5, 6, that I'd heard a stranger's husband do through a curtain 7 weeks earlier, and I gripped the door handle and thought, there it is. That's all I ever wanted. Somebody in the front seat counting. At intake, the nurse checked her screen, and I watched the flag come up behind her eyes. "Your chart is marked private, Mrs. Walker. I show an approved support list. Claire Benton?" Claire raised her hand like it was homework. "That's me. Anyone else to add?" The question just hung there. Ethan's name floated in the fluorescent light between us, 400 miles away at a resort with spa credits, and then Noah pushed downward into the world's least ambiguous answer, and the name dissolved. "No one else," I said. "Labor is its own country, and I won't make you live in it long. I'll give you the parts that matter." Claire feeding me ice chips and threatening to fight the anesthesiologist if he didn't hurry, then apologizing, then thanking him so hard he laughed. Dr. Nair arriving at 2 a.m. with her calm like a weighted blanket, saying, "Everything looks exactly how I want it. Let's meet this kid." At 12:04 a.m., my phone lit on the little table. "Ethan, landed. Hotel is nice. Try not to stress." I was 6 centimeters dilated. I did not answer. The nurse, a charge nurse named Dana Okafor, 22 years in labor and delivery, forearms like a woman who has caught things, glanced at the phone, then at my face, and turned the phone screen down with one finger like she was closing a door softly. "Anything that's not in this room," she said, "is not in this room." At 3:42 a.m., my son arrived screaming his opinions, furious and pink and perfect, and every version of me that had ever waited by a phone for that man died quietly in the corner, unmourned. Noah James Walker, 7 pounds, 1 ounce. A nurse laughed at the sheer volume of him. Claire cried into one hand. Dr. Nair said, "Strong kid," and I held him against my chest, skin to skin, and felt my entire life pick itself up and rearrange around a 7-pound center of gravity. Somewhere in Arizona, his father slept in. The next morning, while I was learning to nurse and Claire was asleep sideways in a vinyl chair, Ethan posted a photo from the pool. Golden light, blue water, a drink with a paper umbrella. Caption, family time. His son was 11 hours old. Then, around noon, Arizona Arizona found out that Denver had gone dark, and my phone began to light up like a slot machine. 11 calls between 12:40 and 3:15. I let everyone go to voicemail. The texts came in between, and I want to show you the progression because it tells the whole story better than I can. Why aren't you answering? Mom tried to call the hospital to check on you, and they won't tell her anything. What did you do? This is embarrassing. She's really upset. Answer your phone. Are you seriously doing this right now? This is so childish. My mother is crying. I hope you're happy. Call me now. 11 calls. 11 plus messages. Read them again the way I did, with a sleeping newborn on my chest in the 3 p.m. light. Not one asked if the baby had been born. Not one asked if the baby was okay. Not one asked if I was okay. His panic was not about his son. It was not even really about me. It was about the sacred load-bearing fact of his universe that his mother gets what she wants, hitting, for the first time in 61 years, a wall that would not move. Dana Okafor, 22 years on that ward, had personally taken one of Lorraine's calls at the nurse's station. I heard about it afterward. Lorraine had asked for a supervisor. Dana Okafor, I'm told, said, "Ma'am, I can neither confirm nor deny that any patient by that name is at this facility," in the tone of a woman reading a card she has read 10,000 times and enjoys more each time. I read the text twice. Then I turn my phone off, all the way off, and watch my son breathe instead. His whole back fit under one of my hands. "Okay," I whispered to him. "It's just us. You'll see. We're very organized." Sunday morning, Dr. Nair signed our discharge. "Both of you are exactly where I want you," she said, then paused at the door with her clipboard. "For what it's worth, the chart flag stays as long as you want it. Some things are easier to keep closed than to close." Claire pulled the Subaru up to the curb with the infant seat already installed. Checked twice. The base level bubbled dead center because my sister does not do approximately, and she did not drive me home. She drove me to the townhouse, to the ground floor unit with my grandmother's dishes in the cabinets and my clothes already hanging in the closet, and my mother's lasagna in the freezer, and a bassinet by a window that got morning light. My mom was waiting on the little porch. She held Noah for a long time and didn't say a single word about Ethan, which is my mother's love language. The withheld comment. Across town, the other house was doing my talking for me. The crib, still standing in a nursery he'd walk past. His clothes, untouched in the closet, hanging next to a stretch of bare wire hangers. My drawers, empty. My toothbrush, gone. The wedding photo by the stairs, lying face down, exactly as I'd left it. Not thrown, not broken, just declined. And on the kitchen island, under Rebecca Lawson's business card, one sealed envelope with his name on it. Inside, a courtesy copy of everything. Petition for legal separation. In re the marriage of Walker and Walker. Case number 26DR 1147. A plain English cover letter from Rebecca noting that the automatic injunction attaches to the case. No unusual withdrawals, no transferring assets, no touching insurance, both parties bound, and that formal service would follow. A copy of the hospital's confidentiality designation, so he'd understand that only approved people got updates about me or Noah, and that the approved list was one sister long. And Rebecca's card, again, with a line in her handwriting. "All communication through my office, please." His flight landed at 10:14 p.m. Sunday. I know because I'd long ago learned to check things myself. At 10:58, my phone rang, which brings us back to the beginning. The kitchen I could see without seeing. The envelope opened now, I assumed, by hands that had started the weekend holding a paper umbrella. "What the hell is going on?" he yelled. Noah stirred against my chest and settled. I kept my voice at newborn volume, which turned out to be the exact volume that carries. "I'm doing what you told me," I said. What does that even mean, Maddie? The house is, your stuff is, there's a lawyer's card on my island. You told me to stay quiet and call an Uber," I said. I stayed quiet. 7 weeks of quiet. And the Uber came 7 weeks ago, Ethan. His name was Gustavo. He walked me into a hospital while you finished your mother's birthday dinner. Everything since then has just been paperwork. Silence. The refrigerator hum. I could hear him turn. I knew that kitchen so well I could hear geometry, and I knew he was looking at the hallway, at the nursery door. "The crib's still here," he said. Quieter now. The yelling had used up whatever he'd walked in with. "The crib was always yours to look at, Maddie." And there it was. My name, just my name, and his voice cracked down the middle like a dropped plate. Did you have him? Is he okay? 51 hours. It took 51 hours, a stripped house, and a legal caption with his surname in it twice for my husband to arrive at the only question that had ever mattered. I looked down at the answer. 7 pounds, 1 ounce, dreaming. "His name is Noah," I said. "Noah James. He was born Saturday at 3:42 in the morning. He's healthy. He's perfect." He screamed at everybody and then slept like he'd won. A sound came through the phone that I had never heard from Ethan in 9 years. A wet, broken inhale. The sound of a man meeting the bill. "I want to see him," he said. "Maddie, please. He's my son." "He is," I said. And I meant it. And this is the part where the internet wants me to say something with a blade in it. And I'm not going to because I had a newborn asleep on my chest and a lawyer with a legal pad and no need for blades. And there's a path to that. It's in the envelope. Read every page. Then call Rebecca Lawson's office in the morning. The number's on the card. She'll walk you through parenting time and how this goes if you show up like an adult. That's the deal now, Ethan. Everything in writing. You taught me that. I never taught you. Every promise you broke was verbal, I said. Everyone. Good night, Ethan. I hung up. I did not throw the phone or stare at it meaningfully. I put it face down on the arm of the couch. Dana Okafor's move. One finger, like closing a door softly. And I fed my son in a quiet townhouse that no one could find without an approved list. Monday morning at 9:15, a former sheriff's deputy named Frank, who now serves papers with the unbothered air of a man watering plants, found Ethan in the parking garage of his office building and handed him the formal set. "You've been served" is apparently much less cinematic in real life. Frank said Ethan just nodded and said, "Yeah, I know." The injunction bound him from that moment, both of us equally, which is the elegant thing about it. The same fence protected both yards. Rebecca had told me he might test it. She'd seen men test it, but he didn't. His lawyer, when he hired one, read the file and I have to assume, explained the topography to him. A client who left on the due date in writing, with a text thread confirming the tickets mattered more than the delivery room, against a wife who had never moved an irregular dollar, never badmouthed him in any message anyone could subpoena, and had a folder labeled with exhibit stickers. There was nothing to fight about, so almost nobody fought. Lorraine fought, of course, for about 9 days. She called my phone from 3 different numbers. She left one voicemail I saved for legal reasons and one I saved for personal ones, in which she demanded her rights to the baby. 4 minutes, and she never once said his name, because she'd never asked what it was. She threatened grandparents' rights the way people threaten things they heard about on television. Rebecca sent one letter on firm letterhead, 2 paragraphs long, explaining with great courtesy the actual state of Colorado law on the matter, and the calls stopped like a tap turned off. I've read a lot of documents in my life. I've never read 2 paragraphs that did more work. The temporary orders came 3 weeks later, mostly by agreement, because there was nothing left to disagree with. Noah with me, parenting time for Ethan starting small, short visits, building up on a schedule, child support at $241 a month per the state worksheet, insurance untouched, exactly as designed. At the courthouse, Ethan wore a suit I'd picked out for him 2 years ago and looked like a man visiting his old life on a tourist visa. He signed everything. His lawyer did the talking. On the way out, in the hallway, he stopped in front of me. Claire stepped up beside my shoulder like a bookend. "The first visit," Ethan said. Is there anything I should bring for him? "They'll give you a list," I said. He nodded. Then quietly, to the floor tiles. "I took the class, the infant one, at the hospital. I went alone." He looked up. "I know it doesn't," I agreed. "But it's the right kind of nothing. Keep doing those. It's been 3 months. Noah has discovered his own hands and regards them with the suspicion of an auditor. He does a fake cough for attention, which he learned from no one, which means he invented manipulation independently at 11 weeks. And honestly, given his grandmother, I've decided to stay vigilant. The visits happen on Saturdays. Ethan shows up on time, which for him is a personality transplant. He shows up alone, no Lorraine in the car, no Lorraine on speakerphone, and I know it's costing him something over there, in that other kingdom, because Gary of all people texted Claire once, unprompted. "Tell Maddie the boy looks like her side. Don't tell Lorraine I said that." Every family has one man scrolling his phone in the passenger seat, and it turns out even he was taking notes. Ethan asked me last Saturday what Noah's sleep schedule was, and then he took out his phone and wrote it down. I watched my husband type our son's nap times into a notes app with the diligence he once reserved for golf tee times, and I felt, not forgiveness, that word is doing no work here, but something like the feeling of watching a debtor make a small payment on time. It doesn't clear the balance. It's just better than the alternative. The legal separation stands. Maybe someday it converts to the other word. Rebecca says there's no rush. The structure holds either way. That's what I paid for, it turns out. Not revenge. Structure. Some nights after the 3 a.m. feed, I stand at the townhouse window with Noah heavy and warm against my shoulder, and I think about the version of me on that bathroom floor with the wooden spoon, and the version in the triage bay listening to a stranger count for his wife, and the version in the doorway in an old sweatshirt being told the tickets were non-refundable. I used to think I owed those women an apology for how long it took. I don't. They were working the whole time, quietly. He told me to stay quiet, and it's the only instruction he ever gave me that I followed to the letter. I stayed quiet for 7 weeks, and the quiet signed a lease, hired a lawyer, filed a petition, marked a chart, and packed a Fox onesie into the right bag. Then, at 3:42 on a Saturday morning, my son arrived screaming, and I let him do the talking for both of us.